World of Tanks. What is RNG? RNG stands for Random Number Generator. Now, keep in mind what people usually say RNG is not what it really is. You know, people use it to talk about something stupid that happened, or a bug in the game, or something like that, or a player error. But really, RNG is a random value added to your damage, penetration, or other aspects of the game. So it adds a range, minimum and maximum, to damage values and penetration. It's damage values against hit points or the chance of penetration. So if it weren't for RNG, every time you fired a shot, it would do the same exact amount of damage, and your armor penetration would always be exactly the same. So without RNG, if you have 100 millimeters of penetration and the enemy tank is 101, you would never penetrate it. In the real world, that's not the case. In the real world, sometimes the ammo would penetrate, sometimes it won't. So in the video game, they added it with a 25% spread, which is actually kind of wide. If your shot, gun, and ammo, you got to look at everything, does 100 hit points and damage. Without RNG, it will always be 100 hit points. With RNG, it's plus or minus 25%. So that would be a minimum of 75 and a maximum of 125. Over time, they'll all average out to 100. If your ammunition is rated at 100 millimeters, it will only penetrate armor rated at 100 millimeters or less. That's without RNG. With RNG, you might penetrate as low as 75 or a maximum of 125. So there's a 50% chance you'll penetrate over 100 millimeters. Without RNG, 0% chance. So it adds realism to the game, makes it more fun. You don't want to play a game where the enemy has 100 hit points and your gun does 33 damage and you got to hit him for 33, 33, 33, and then he's got 1 hit point left. Would you want to play a game? Would you call that fair? You want it to be where sometimes you can do it in 3 shots and sometimes you can do it in 4 shots. That's why RNG is important in the game. It's more like the real world because damage and penetration is not always the exact same value. If you have a plate of armor with a certain rating, it's not, they don't use the ratings as it always will be. There's going to be a chance that you can penetrate a plate of armor with a lower rated shell. And the reason why is because they're going to take that plate and they're going to test it. And let's say they fire 100 rounds and they're going to say, well, it penetrated 5 times, so we're only going to include the 95%. We'll say it's that rating with 95% accuracy. In the real world, you can still penetrate based on the rating that they say it is. They don't say, well, you'd have to, let's say it's 100 millimeters, you'd have to make it 120 so that you wouldn't be able to penetrate it. They don't do it that way. There's a little percentage. The example I use is 5%. RNG allows the game to be more realistic as compared to not having it. If you didn't have RNG, people would complain, how come my 100 millimeter ammo can't penetrate 101 millimeter armor? That's the reason why they add it. No matter what people complain, they're going to complain more without RNG. That's why you have to have it. RNG is used by players to denote player error, especially something rare and unusual. This, however, is not the true definition of RNG. So for comedic reasons, RNG is used by players to denote player error, especially something rare and unusual. This, however, is not the true definition of RNG. Random numbers are calculated using mathematical formulas. Good example is the value of pi. Pi has never been found to be repeating. So if you follow the stream of numbers, it's hard for a human to detect a pattern. and therefore, if you use it in a game, you won't see a pattern. I'll use example. I had a Tetris game many years ago, and I discovered it dropped the same pieces in the same order every game because there was no randomization. So, and the other example is Pac-Man. You might be aware of this. You can beat Pac-Man because the ghosts go in the same direction throughout the entirety of the game. So if you do like a little pattern, you can beat the game. And if you do the pattern the same every time you play, you'll always beat the game because there's no RNG. They did not add it to that game. Some of the old video games don't have RNG, which means that there's a pattern and you can beat the machine. It sometimes happens with lotto machines where they don't have a good seed, so it too many people can figure out how the system works. It's happened before. Okay, so I put some references over here that explains about RNG in more detail. And I'll link to this video. It's going to be on cheapbooks.cc. You can search RNG or go to the World of Tanks section in War Games in the Video Games PC section. Or you can go to my video game site, which is, it's going to come up in a moment, video-game-news.com, and go into World of Tanks, and you can see a bunch of World of Tanks videos from popular streamers.